Welcome to Financial Aid Basics. My name is Christina Winstead, and I'm the Associate Director for College Access Initiatives at the Washington Student Achievement Council. And I'm excited to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, paying for education after high school. If you'd like a copy of this training or access to the links that we talk about throughout the training, you can access this one-pager that will allow you to have access to the deck as well as the recording. This is updated throughout the year, and you can just use it to reference throughout the time that you're serving students. In our trainings, we always like to have our training intention. And the intention of this training is really to support you, educators, and those who are helping students, as you support them through their process of financial aid, really to familiarize yourself with this application. During this presentation, of course, we're always going to draw from our expertise in financial aid, from the years that we've done this work, but also our experiences supporting students and our own experiences accessing aid when we were pursuing education after high school. But I want to acknowledge that students, they have their own unique lived experience, and this is going to change how they perceive and engage with financial aid. And I just want to make sure that as we go through this process and we talk about financial aid, you may incorporate your own story as well when you work with students on financial aid. And so we just wanted to make sure that training intention is there. Today, you're going to learn about what financial aid is. We're going to talk about the types of financial aid. We're going to talk about the financial aid timeline, the steps to applying for financial aid. We have some 26-27 financial aid updates for you. We have resources, and then, of course, your next steps. First, I want to start with some data. This is financial aid completion data for the class of 2025. You can see here we have a new data dashboard. If you're not familiar with it, it's a little bit different than before. It actually provides a little bit more data, and you have it in a map as well. You'll see the class of 2026 data be available typically towards the middle of October when we get our first data from the federal student aid. And we will also be updating, this is updated weekly, so you can track how your school is doing or even the schools in your area. If you're a college, maybe staff member, you can see how the schools in your service district are doing. What I love about this tool is it allows you just to keep tracking. We all have our financial aid goals, and I think it's important to kind of keep track of that. Now, if you're looking at this data and you're thinking, 53%, Christina, that's pretty low. I want to say one thing. I know that it's a lot of hard work to increase financial aid completion. So if you're thinking that this is low and you worked really hard last year with students and maybe you're not seeing that reflected in these numbers, I want you to pause and realize that not one person on their own is going to increase financial aid completion. It's all of us three working through collective impact to do this. So if you're feeling beat up by the data, I encourage you, reach out to me. I have other data points too that show the amazing work that's happening in Washington. The fact about Washington is we have one of the most equitable financial aid packages in the nation, but we also have one of the lower completion rates in the nation. And that's something we're all working together to increase because every student deserves the opportunity to know what's available to them and to be able to access that aid. So what is financial aid and where does it come from? Financial aid is simply, it's money to pay for education after high school. And so what this does is it takes different types of funding like grants, work study loans, and scholarships, and it just helps make that education more affordable. When we talk about education after high school, I think there are misconceptions from students that this only applies to maybe a bachelor's degree or four-year schools or even two-year schools. But the reality in Washington is it can be applied to so much more. We'll talk more about that. So I know in Washington State, we don't like umbrellas, but for financial aid purposes, I encourage you, please embrace the umbrella. The financial aid umbrella includes four major types of funding: our grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. Grants are income-based. They're federal, state, and institutional grants out there. They're my favorite type of funding, and we'll talk more about why that is. Then we have scholarships. Scholarships are merit and income based. There are public, private, and nonprofit sources of scholarships. You have scholarships for students who are left-handed, scholarships for students who want to write about how they're going to survive the zombie apocalypse. There's scholarships for everybody, and we'll talk more about some amazing ones in Washington State. Loans are another option for students for paying for their education after high school. And while loans may not be our favorite type of financial aid, we want to make sure that students have access to information about loans so that they're informed consumers. Loans are income-based, and there are federal and private loans. And then finally, work study. I know your students are going to think the word work is like, ugh, and then the word study, ugh, and then some reason we put them into a program title, work study. We know that does not sound like fun. And in fact, a student told me hard pass when they heard that. But the reality is, it's an amazing opportunity to work while going to school. It is income based. There's federal, state, and institutional work study. And we're going to talk more about why it is one of the favorite programs I have, and it changed my life. So let's talk about grants. Grants are amazing. And in fact, in Washington State, we have such amazing grants. Grants are gift aid. You don't have to typically pay them back. And so students receive these funds. They typically don't have to pay them back, and that's why they're called gift aid. Now, of course, there's going to be some circumstances where a student might owe money back. They might owe the refunded funds that they received back to the school. And so this can happen when a student doesn't meet what's called satisfactory academic progress. And just like real sap for a tree, it can get sticky. SAP means that a student has to maintain a certain GPA, typically around a 2.0, and they have to complete a percentage of the classes they attempt. So it doesn't mean that like if a student takes a bunch of classes and they fail one, they're going to have to pay everything back. But students want to be careful. And here's an example of when a student might have to pay back those funds. And the student I worked with, she gave me permission to share this story. So, my first quarter teaching college, I was very excited about teaching college. So excited, I made goodie bags for my students. It kind of looked like a kindergartner's birthday party. And so, unintentional, but I was very excited. So, all my students show up the first day, and I'm very excited. And then day two, I get ghosted by one, and I think, oh, they didn't like the snacks I made. But it wasn't that. So, I go through the whole quarter, and at the end of the quarter, I decide to do finals with a snack bar because I know that it can be stressful to do presentations and I feel like it's okay if you eat your feels. So I made some eggplant rollatini and set up my little buffet in the back of the classroom. My students did their presentations, and then a student comes in that I don't recognize, and she just goes straight to the back. And this is after the last presentation, and she just gets herself a plate of eggplant rollatini. And I think, ah, I've arrived. I'm a chef and a financial aid person, and I'm also a professor. But the reality was the student said, I'm in your class. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I said, okay, sit down, have a snack. I'm just finishing up class and we'll talk. She said, I was in your class on day one. I went, oh, you were. It's the last day. Let's talk about what happened. I said, well, like day two, you sent me a check. And I went, oh, yeah, the college does send checks to students for books and supplies. The student didn't see the note in there that said it was for books and supplies. So she thought it was just extra money for her to go and have some fun. And she told me, did you know that Alaska Airlines, and as soon as I heard Alaska Airlines, my heart drops. Did you know they had a sale where you could get a buy one, get one free ticket? So me and my bestie, we went to Vegas. My heart sinks even further. And they didn't go back to school when they came back because she didn't have any money for books. So they didn't drop their classes. And that student ended up owing back the money that they had in there because they never attended any of their classes other than the first day. They did owe that money back. And we were able to work with them and another organization to help them get back on track. But it did delay their education by 3 months. And so the student told me to let everyone know financial aid is amazing for going to college, but not for going to Vegas. So I encourage you, use those beautiful grant funds to pay for educational costs. There are two amazing grants that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk the most about the Washington College Grant, and then there's also the Pell Grant. The Washington College Grant, which you'll also hear as the WA Grant, is a new amazing opportunity in Washington State. It is a groundbreaking commitment. What I love about the WA Grant is it is a more improved version of the state need grant that I received that allows me to do what I love every day and earn a family wage. And that's all I want for our students. So this gives them even more opportunity than what I had because it is on a sliding scale for income and it gives opportunities not just for bachelor's, but for certificates, job training, apprenticeships. It really is looking at what is that pathway the student wants and how we can best support them. Because we know a family wage is not just critical for our students, but for the economic viability of Washington State. And so what I love about this program is that a family of four making up to 131,000 a year can get some gift aid through the Washington College Grant, which is amazing. And if a family of four makes 78,500 or less, they're going to get a full tuition award. Of course, families are going to want to know what's available to them, and that's why we have the Washington State Financial Aid Calculator. It calculates the potential award from the Washington College Grant, and if they have their SAI from the FAFSA, it will also calculate a little bit of a Pell estimate. Um, I encourage with this calculator, it's just two questions. So this is great to use with families, especially if families don't think they're eligible. I will hear from families, I'm not eligible for financial aid. And then when we sit down and look at this calculator, we find out, yes, they are eligible. And it changes the conversation that they have within their family about pursuing education after high school. Of course, the only way to know how much they're actually going to get is to apply. This is just an estimate, but it's a great way to encourage families to apply for financial aid, or even to encourage parents maybe who are apprehensive about providing their information because they don't think that they're going to be qualified for aid. So let's talk about scholarships. Scholarships are gifts that don't have to be paid back. They're designed to help students pay for education after high school. Scholarships are amazing because they can just be like a one-time gift that they get, but there's also renewable scholarships. And we'll talk more about that renewable scholarship in a minute. The Washington State Opportunity Scholarship is amazing for students going into STEM fields. This is a great opportunity in not just four-year programs, but for the two-year programs as well, for the community college programs. And they even have a graduate scholarship. WSOS, which is the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, I highly encourage students to look to see if it's available to them. It is a last dollar scholarship, which means everything else pays first, and then their money comes in last. And if any monies were funded, typically it comes out of that. So then it gives students even more opportunities. For example, I had a student that received the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship who not only did they receive a scholarship, they also had a mentor assigned to them in the field that they were going into. So they learned all about the reality of the world of work that they were going into. I really love that extra support. And that student was able to use their funds to get housing, to go from shared housing to individual housing to help them have a better space to study in. I encourage you when you're working with scholarships, have all students apply for scholarships. Students think that they're not going to be eligible for them because they think, oh, you have to be into sports or a 4.0 student. And like, I'm here as the poster child of a 90s slacker who got a lot of scholarships. I'm here to tell you that they can get them. They just have to apply. Another scholarship is the American Endowed Indian Scholarship. And this one is amazing because it is also graduate and prioritizes graduate students. American Indian Endowed Scholarship comes through Washington State. And so I encourage, there are awards between $500 and $2,000. There's 10 to 15 awards. But I also encourage, if for students who are going into upper division or graduate level studies, this is really important to always try to find that additional funding. Loans. So loans may not be anyone's favorite type of educational funding, but we want to talk to them because students need to know about them so they can make an informed decision. And so loans are funds that a student borrows, but they have to pay them back. So unlike grants or work study, they're going to pay these back. Loans come in two different types from the federal government. You have subsidized and unsubsidized. Unsubsidized loans are the loans that you take out, and the minute you take them out, the interest starts accruing. Subsidized loans are loans that the interest is paid while the student goes to school. So the student takes out the loan, and Uncle Sam's like, hey, I'm going to cover the cost of the interest while you're in school for a short period after. A big thing to know about loans is that students don't have to take out the full amount of the loan they're offered. If a student is offered, let's say, $5,000 in loans and they only need 1,000, I encourage them to take what they need, not what they want. Take the 1,000, not the 5,000. I just think it's one of those things that it's very easy to take out and spend. And I have students who will tell me, oh, I'm going to take out a little money and buy this or that. And I encourage them, if they're going to do that, to look at the item that they're going to purchase with those funds and think about how much it's going to cost with interest accrued over the next 10 years to pay that off. For example, I had a student that was like, I'm going to get myself an Xbox, and I'm old, so I'm talking about the old school Xbox. And I said, okay, let's calculate it out. And we found out how much they were going to pay over the next 10 years for an item that was going to be obsolete in 10 years. And it really changed their mind of like, maybe I don't need to do that. And so I encourage, use these funds for educational costs and take what you need, not what you want. Work study, again, I know we talked about how the title of this program probably is not the best advertising to students because they think those two words together are hard. I know we got to learn how to title programs a little better, but it is an amazing opportunity. Work studies where you can work on campus. And for me, It really changed like the work that I thought I could do while going to school. I was working service industry while attending college, and I got a work study position and in financial aid. And don't worry, your student doesn't have to go into financial aid, but if they do find financial aid fun and exciting, we have a support group, and that's how most of us find it is through work study. And so there's plenty of fun in the financial aid world. But students will have opportunities to find jobs in student life. Fitness center is always fun. I had a student in student life that they got a work study job in student life doing catering contracts. We found out that they wanted to be an event planner, so their supervisor allowed them to learn how to do the catering contracts, release forms like photo release forms for an event, how to put the event together, all of the logistics. This student even learned the realities of like the on the job work of what happens in Olympia when it snows 3 inches and we have to shut down an event because we don't have everything being canceled and we have 500 burritos showing up. That catering contract, what does it say? Oh, it says we can't refuse the order because of the hour. What do we do with those burritos? Spoilers, the student learned that we go and deliver them to anybody who needs food. But the student got to learn how to navigate all those things while being a work study. For me, it was the first time while working in service industry, having an employer that said, hey, do you want to take time off during finals so you can study and work extra hours next week? I thought they were trying to scam me. I thought that they were trying to fire me, but the reality was they just wanted me to feel supported in school. And it was the first time I felt that from an employer. So these work study jobs are amazing. If you are an educator and you had work study opportunities that you want to share that with your students, I encourage you share your story because the program title itself is not selling it. But when I tell students the things that my students have been able to do and myself, it's a really cool opportunity. Let's talk about the sources of financial aid. So we know the types. Let's find out where it's coming from. So federal aid can be used at most schools across the United States. They just have to be eligible for financial aid. Washington State's financial aid is for Washington State residents, so Washingtonians, who are going to go to school, and it's over 60 schools in Washington State they can attend with Washington State funds. Colleges will also have funds available, and those funds are offered to students to attend that specific institution. And then organizations, businesses, nonprofits, churches, they may have scholarships or in-kind donations. So here's some examples of federal financial aid. We have the federal Pell Grant, we have federal work study, the unsubsidized and subsidized student loans that we talked about, and then one more type of loan called parent loans. Parent loans are loans that a parent can take out in their own name to help pay for the cost of their child's education. Those loans never revert back to the student. They are always in the parent's name. When parents are taking out parent loans, I highly encourage them to look at their own student debt first to ensure that the payments are manageable. Let's talk about Washington State Aid, one of my favorite things in Washington, and we have mountains, so that says a lot. We have the Washington College Grant. We have College Bound, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. We have that state work study program. We have Passport to Careers for our youth who are experiencing unaccompanied homelessness and or foster care. And then the Opportunity Grant. And these are all our Washington Opportunity Pathways. And the Washington Student Achievement Council implements most of them. We also have the Washboard, which is our scholarship warehouse where students can build a profile and they're matched to the scholarships. For College Bound is an amazing program that is a two-step process for students. And so the College Bound program, what it does is it allows students to be auto-enrolled in middle school. So in middle school, if they are eligible for free or reduced price lunch, and for a small portion of students in ninth grade, they are going to be auto-enrolled into this program for public school students. And if a student's experienced foster care anytime between middle school and high school through high school graduation, they're also auto-enrolled. After that, and we know some of your students may not know if they're college bound because like middle school was a lifetime ago. And so if they don't know, the high school staff have access to a list of college bound students. And college bound students we engage with through letters, text messaging, and email to provide additional support. So the second step to this, so they get signed up early, and part of that is so they can dream big. They're not thinking about how much is it going to cost me to go to school, but more of like, what are my options? And so their second step is to fulfill the college bound program requirements. They're going to do that by meeting income and residency requirements, and they do that by completing a financial aid and admissions application. They have to be accepted to and attend an eligible college within 1 year of graduation, which means, and this is the best, that they can take a gap year with these funds. But we know gap years can turn to gap decades really quick, so we want them to have a plan. I always encourage students with college bound who are going to take a gap year to see if the college they want to go to would be willing to allow them to do a admissions with a deferment of enrollment for 1 year. Some schools will allow a student to apply, be admitted, and defer their enrollment for up to a year. And so that could be an option, but at a bare minimum, I encourage them to reach out to the college that they want to attend to get on their mailing list so that they can be informed of when they need to start registering for classes, because that happens really early, and so that they don't lose track of time. And then College Bound has a usage limit to 6 years following that initial enrollment, which means so they have 6 years to use those funds. So those students, and they have to use it towards the highest level they can get is a bachelor's, but it also means that we know in college life can happen and you might need to take a break, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do education after high school. And if that's the case, if you need to take a break, that you can take a small break and still have these funds waiting for you because you have 6 years to use them. It's going to combine with other state funds to cover the average cost of tuition at public rates. So the highest public rates are going to be at UW and Wazoo tuition rates, and then some fees and a small book allowance, and that's the commitment. And the nice thing is you're seeing it's at the public rate. So you may be thinking, what if what if a student wants to go to a private college? That's also an option, because the private colleges, even though there's a difference in tuition from the public to private rate, some of the colleges are providing a scholarship that covers the difference. So I always tell students, again, the whole thing with College Bound is to dream big. Look at all of their options. And so I encourage students to see what is the best fit for them, because it can be used at about 60 schools in Washington State, and that is 2 year, 4 year, public and private. Passport to Careers is an amazing program supporting youth who've experienced foster care, alumni of foster care, and those who are experiencing unaccompanied homelessness. The Passport to College Promise is a program that supports students who are going from high school right into higher education. And then the Passport to Apprenticeship is for students who are going into an apprenticeship programs. So whatever program they're picking, they have support. We typically have a financial aid night for these students somewhere around January. And that was actually suggested by the students in this program, that they have additional support mid-year to apply for financial aid. We'll have that on our events page, and you can send any students to it. It's always free to attend, and those events are always in English and Spanish. Okay, now that we know about the types of aid, where it comes from, let's talk about a timeline and how students are able to access aid. Before we jump into that, we just want to remind students that in this process, financial aid applications are asking for really private data and some questions that can be really hard to answer. And it's natural to have concerns about privacy, especially when you are being asked those questions and filling out the application, or even when a student is asking their parents those questions. I want to remind anyone who is uncomfortable with doing the FAFSA form can still use the WASFA to apply for state aid only. They'd be ineligible for federal aid, but they would be able to access the state aid only. That means they wouldn't get as much aid if they were eligible for federal aid, but it's an option. So I've had families who have not wanted to apply because they don't want to give their information to the government, or that they've just not wanted to utilize those federal funds. So I just want to make sure people know that they have those options when applying for aid. We always encourage students to look at the privacy statements and make an informed decision, and we have both of those on our webpage. When applying for financial aid, students are going to fill out one application. So this is our rule of one. Students will fill out the FAFSA or the WAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and the WAFSA is the Washington application for state financial aid. If a student completes the FAFSA, they will be being considered for federal and state aid at the same time, and that's why they don't need to fill out two applications. But some students might not be eligible for federal aid, and we want to make sure they have access to Washington state aid, and so they'll do the WAFSA. So for the FAFSA, typically students with a social security number, a permanent resident number, Students who are from freely associated states like Marshall Islands, and even students with like some certain refugee statuses will be eligible as either citizens or eligible non-citizens for federal student aid. If a student is not eligible for federal aid, they're going to go ahead and complete the WAFSA. And the WAFSA has a questionnaire. So if you don't know if your student's eligible, what your student's eligible for, that's fine. You shouldn't know because we're not supposed to ask those questions. But you can use the WAFSA eligibility questionnaire, which is right on our WAFSA page. It's about 3 or 4 questions that it's going to ask the students, and then it will direct them to the correct application. I encourage you when you're doing a financial aid event, just put all of your computers on the WAFSA questionnaire and allow students to determine which application they need to do. That way, no one's making a guess or assumptions of status. They will only complete one. And the reason we say this is, and I love this about students, and especially this generation, they are very fiscally minded. So students will think, hey, if I do one application, then if I do two, they'll double the amount they give me. And I'm here to tell you that is not what happens in any way, shape, or form. They are going to use the application that they are eligible for. When they do both applications, all I get is gray hairs, like double the gray hairs, as I try to figure out which application they wanted to do in the first place. So they only have to complete one. If they complete the FAFSA, they'll be considered for federal and state aid. And if they complete the WASFA, they'll be considered for state aid only. Of course, for eligibility requirements for Washington state aid means that you need to be a Washingtonian. And Washington state aid means that also it's for US citizens, but also non-citizens who are Washington residents can access Washington state aid. So in most cases, Washington residency is someone who's lived in Washington state for 12 consecutive months prior to starting college and has a high school diploma equivalent. So they're maintaining a domicile in Washington state for 12 consecutive months for purposes other than college. And so I kind of think of it this way. If you have a student that has survived 12 months in Washington, maybe they have done 12 rainy, right now beautiful, sunny, but also smoky, rainy again months. If you survive those 12 months with us, you are a Washingtonian. Go ahead, um, get yourself a jacket with a hood, get rid of that umbrella. You're a Washingtonian now, and then apply for some Washington state aid. We have these flyers that you can use that are in multiple languages that talk about the residency requirements for Washington State. So I have some information about for the class of 26. I also know that you're going to be serving other classes too, and I'm kind of just going with the opening class of 26 because that's this year. The class of 26 is going to complete the 26-27 FAFSA or WAFSA starting October 1st. The 26-27 FAFSA for WAFSA sounds super futuristic, but that's when our students are graduating and going to school. They're going to use 2024 income information. So we are back to an October release for financial aid. The last couple years, it's come out in like December and January. It's been a little weird, but this year we are back to what I affectionately call pumpkin spice and everything nice and financial aid because students have to apply for financial aid every year. And this is how they're going to remember that. When it gets pumpkin spice and everything nice out there, it's time to think about financial aid. I want it to be like a Pavlov response. And I'm not talking about false pumpkin spice season that hits us in August from Starbucks. No, thank you. I am talking about a full-blown pumpkin spice situation, as we see probably right now. We are talking about when you see pumpkin spice combos that gross you out, I want you to think about financial aid. I saw an ad for pumpkin spice salmon. All I could think is financial aid. And that is how you will remember to apply for financial aid every year. When it gets nice, pumpkin spice and everything nice, it's time to apply. Here's the timeline. Students are going to gather their required documents, and then they're going to create an account for the FAFSA or the WAFSA. Starting October 1st, they're going to apply. And spoilers for those who are watching this video early, the federal student aid application, the FAFSA, has actually opened already. Students will apply for financial aid and admissions at the same time because what happens is they have to do both. You can apply for all the money in the world, but if we don't have a school to send it to, it's really hard. So students will want to do both processes. And the deadlines for both processes are different. They have admissions deadlines and financial aid deadlines, totally different dates. So it's great for a student to be able to write these down or maybe put them in a calendar. Then, if the colleges reach out to a student with any request for additional information, they need to follow up. And so especially if it is a financial aid department that is reaching out to the student, I don't care if it is an actual letter or a postcard or an email or a portal notification or a pigeon with a note tied around its leg, whatever way the financial aid department reaches out to that student, they have to respond because they're probably picked for a process called verification that we'll talk more about. They've done nothing wrong, but they have to respond or the financial aid department can't provide them with the aid. They can't release aid. We'll talk more about verification in a couple minutes, but we want to make sure it's not because financial aid wants to be their pen pal, it's because they need something from them. And then finally, students are going to receive financial aid offers, which are commonly called financial aid awards, and they are going to accept the award for the school they want to go to. So they're going to find out whether they've been admitted to the college or not, if they've been offered a spot, and how much money in federal, state, and institutional aid they've been offered, and how much they need to pay out of pocket for that education. They can use those award letters then to assess and find what the best fit for them is going to be. So what documents do students need to apply for financial aid? When a student's applying for aid, it's great if they have a license or state ID, just so that they can match the information and put their name in correctly, but they don't need to have one. I also find that students are very excited when they've been newly minted with a driver's license. So if they want to bring it, awesome. But it does help because they are matching the legal name in the system. Income information. So bank statements, W-2s, pay stubs from prior year taxes. So from 2024 year income, if applicable. So if the student maybe worked but didn't file taxes, their W-2s will be helpful. The parent is most likely going to need to provide information if the student's under 24 because the student is dependent. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But this is going to include parents' bank statements, child support statements. If they have a small business with more than 100 employees, they are going to need to evaluate that business. But if they have less than 100 employees on their farm or small business, they don't have to add it to their assets. It will not count. Having access to the bank statements helps because they're going to be asked how much is in their cash checking and savings. And then for those who are completing the FAFSA, having your social security card is helpful because students will be entering in their information to create their account as exactly listed on a social security card. And for some students, this is the first time they've seen it. And I always tell students, if they look at their social security card and realize something is misspelled, it is okay. Sustaining the miracle of life for that first year while doing paperwork is very challenging and mistakes can happen and they can fix it. But if they see that error and they're applying for aid, they're going to enter in their name as exactly listed on that social security card, even if there's an error, and then they can fix it after they've fixed it with the Social Security Administration. Okay, the first step to the FAFSA is the studentaid.gov account, also known as the FSA ID. You're going to see this shift in language over the next year or so, where they are going to stop referring to the student aid, like the account for the FAFSA. They're going to stop referring it to as an FSA ID. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it's important that it's just creating an account. If they've already created one, they'll use what they have. It's just a change in the name. So creating an account will require for the student a social security number, if applicable. For the parent, if they don't have a social, they just check a box that says I don't have a social security number, and it'll bring them through the account creation process. The student is going to need to have their own email address. So if they use their high school email address, they're going to lose access to it after they graduate high school. So this is a great time for them to create an email address that they're going to check on a regular basis that does not make an admissions officer blush. And I say that as someone who worked in admissions, whose boss would slide the applications over and have me read emails out loud. And there were certain email addresses I couldn't read out loud without losing my job. So I say, don't be that student. Have the one that is a email address kind of professional that you're going to use on a regular basis. The phone number is not required. It is optional for this process. Everyone contributing to a FAFSA is going to need a studentaid.gov account. So they're all going to need accounts that they're contributing. And in some situations, that means both parents will have to have an account, especially if they filed taxes separately. Starting this year, there's no longer a 1 to 3 day wait to verify that information. And then for those who don't have social security numbers, they will be able to use their FSA ID, the studentaid.gov account. They'll be able to use it automatically. And we'll talk more in depth about this. There's two ways to apply for financial aid. There's the website. So you can do the FAFSA website, or you can do a paper application. The quickest processing is going to be on the website, but I do acknowledge that there is going to be students who only will have access to that paper app, especially our justice involved youth. We have resources that we can send out for justice involved youth. Just feel free to reach out to us. But we know that that application paper wise does take a little bit longer to process. If your student uses the paper app, no worries. They're going to receive a email to the email that they list on the application, as well as a letter back verifying they've received it and giving them a student aid report as well. There's two language options on the FAFSA page. It's going to be in English and Spanish, but there's also a list of resources on their page and numbers that you can call for support in, I think, 11 other languages. Here's the WAFSA page. So the WAFSA questionnaire that I told you about, this is how to access that, where it's going to ask a couple questions and determine whether you need to complete the FAFSA or the WAFSA, or for some students, they may not be eligible for both. And that's when we encourage a lot of scholarships. The WAFSA account creation is for the student only. The student's going to follow this process, not the parent. They're going to need their own email address. Again, non-school email that they'll check on a regular basis that won't make an admissions officer blush. It's available in English and Spanish, and you will need internet access. There is a paper app coming, but for right now, you'll need internet access. Our most common errors on the application include using your legal name and social security number, filling out the wrong year application, because when a student applies for financial aid, the current year application and next year's application are both available at the same time. So a student might accidentally complete the 25-26 FAFSA, and that's okay. If they do that, I will just simply call it the practice FAFSA, and I tell the student, listen, you learned how to do an initial submission. Let's do a renewal, and you'll learn how to do that too, and you'll be ahead of the game. And we have them renew the application, go in, and they're able to then go back in and do it. So it's not the end of the world, but it does happen. Not hitting submit on the application is a common error. So making sure the student gets notification saying that it's been received, and then not using the correct parent's information. Right now, especially in this economy, students might be facing different financial circumstances than the tax year that they are asking for. So you might find that students in the class of 26, because they're being asked for 2024 income information, may have had a decrease in income. And if they have, I encourage them to connect with the financial aid office of the school or schools that they want to go to. And I encourage them to appeal their financial aid through whatever process they have. But Swift Student has a template for them that they can use to make writing that letter a little easier. We know starting a letter can be challenging, just getting through the formatting of it. But what this tool does is it allows the student to select the reason why they're asking for an appeal, and then it asks them questions in very plain language, and then it makes a letter formatted perfectly in very financial aid language. And so it's really helpful to help the student advocate for themselves. But anybody who's experienced a decrease of income, if there's been a layoff or a war notice right now, if that's going to impact their ability to access education after high school, we encourage them to reach out to the financial aid office. And they can get appeals on any of these topics. So that it'll help them access appeal generated forms for these. And so it can include things like missing a deadline for financial aid. What happens if you have other like costs, like maybe you have elder care costs and that's not calculated into things? How do we ask for a reassessment? So like I said, you might have some students who don't qualify for FAFSA or WAFSA, and that's when I really encourage doing scholarship applications at the same time all other students are doing FAFSA or WAFSA. And one of the ones I encourage is Immigrants Rising, because there's like 24 pages of scholarships that have no citizenship requirement at all. And I love that. And there are graduate scholarships on here, which is like the unicorn of scholarships. So this is a great page to use. I also encourage like checking with the financial aid office, any of the multicultural centers on campus, just to see what's available. Students might be asked to complete a CSS profile. The CSS profile is a College Board product that gives a more in-depth look to the family's ability to pay so that the colleges can apply institutional funds to the student. So CSS profile is not for like state and federal aid, but this is for the schools themselves to be able to provide their own aid. Um, to do a CSS profile, if your family makes 100,000 or less, then they don't get charged for it. But if it's 100,000 or more than 100,000, then it's going to be $25 for the initial application and 16 bucks for each school they want to send the report to. Okay, verification. We talked a little bit about it before, but I wanted to go a little more in depth about it because it varies year to year how many students they verify. So verification is simply them verifying the information students put on their application to verify that it's correct. Students can be selected for verification like randomly, but also to clarify information. For example, a student listed their own income. They saw their parents' income and went, okay, my mom made 42,000. And the student went, well, like if mom's money is mom's money, it's also my money. So the student also listed that they earned 42,000. And so all of a sudden it doubled their family's income. And the financial aid department went, wait a minute, what 16-year-old made 42,000? I'm in the wrong industry. What happened there? And clarified with the student. The student said, no, 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 that's my mom's income. And because they were able to adjust that, the student was now eligible for aid again. And so it's just to clarify that information that might be incorrect. It's important because schools have different ways of connecting with students. They might, like I said, they probably won't do a carrier pigeon. I don't think any of the schools are doing that, but they're probably going to do an email, portal notification, or a postcard. They need to follow whatever process the school sets, and they have to reach out if they're stuck at all. Like I said, it is heartbreaking for financial aid officers and for students when the student can't have their funds dispersed because of this process. I always encourage, if they're concerned at all, the financial aid office is there to help them. I know it can be scary talking to somebody new, but they want to help you with that process. So we have some financial aid updates for this upcoming year. And spoilers, it means the application is going to be easier. So financial aid beta tested, federal student aid beta tested the 26-27 FAFSA in August and September, and they just finished their beta testing, and the application's open to anybody who wants to apply a week early. And the nice thing to see was also in that process, and I participated in beta two, it was very smooth. That 96% of those who utilized the application during beta were satisfied with the form and felt that it took, 96% were satisfied and 90% felt that it took a reasonable amount of time. I'm hearing from a lot of families. I haven't heard anyone say more than 30 minutes at this point, which has been great. So real-time identity verification, I touched on a little bit earlier, but what it means that is starting last month in August, anybody who's creating a studentaid.gov account, an FSA ID, they're going to be automatically verified. It used to take 1 to 3 days to verify information with Social Security before a student could actually complete their application. This automatic verification means we no longer have to have a two-step process. We no longer have to meet with students to do their FSA ID or create their accounts and then wait 3 days and then have a financial aid event. It means we can do it all in one event now. Yay! It means one less night in the library or gym. The only challenge is that if the student changes any of their identifiers on their account, it's going to take 1 to 3 days. And that's why they want to be mindful if they're changing stuff that it could impact their ability to access their application. But this is a huge change. And I'd like to thank all of the educators, counselors, those working with students who reached out to me to tell me how challenging this has been. Anytime you do that, we're able to then take your concerns and elevate your voice to the federal level and give that feedback. And it was a lot of people that gave that feedback, and this was the change that came from it. So if a student's parent does not have a social security number, for the verification process, they're going to be asked knowledge-based identity questions. If they're able to answer those successfully, they verify the account immediately. If it's unsuccessful, there's no steps needed at this point. They can still go through and contribute to the application. They are working on a process to be able to link the information through an identifier, the ITIN numbers, the individual tax identification numbers. And until they can do that, they're not going to update this process. And we have more information in FSA electronic announcements. Okay, this is a big one. I'm so excited about y'all. Thank you again also for your feedback on this. Last year, to invite a contributor, you had to have the student access the parent's name, birthday, social, like all these different things that they had to have as exactly listed in their FSA ID. It made it very challenging for students to invite their parents. And federal student aid, and we also received feedback, made giant changes to the application this year. And that is that students can now invite a parent to contribute to their application simply by entering an email. Just an email. I'm just going to let that absorb. It is going to be so much easier this year because we don't have to tell parents why is your student asking for your social, things like that. One email and it works. The best part is it doesn't have to be the email on file. It can be any email address they put in there. And if the parent doesn't get the email, they still they can still access the code, and I'll show you that in a minute. So what happens is the student invites the parent, and the parent's going to receive a code in an email. This is what it looks like. And then if they click accept invitation on that email, it actually enters the code into, just automatically, into the site so that they can submit it. If the student finds out that their parent did not get an email, no worries. The student can access the code as well and then give it to their parent, and the parent can manually enter in the code to access the application. This is going to make it a lot easier and less time consuming to invite parents. I've heard feedback from parents who participated in beta 2 that this new improved process has allowed them, both their student and them, to complete the application. One student told me 15 minutes and the parent said it took her 18 minutes, and that's because she lost her password to get into her bank account. So it is a lot more improved. I'm very excited to see how this impacts our events. And again, thank you for all your feedback. If you have feedback about the application process, that public comment period we put on our Padlet every year for federal student aid, and we'll notify you when it's coming again. So now we talked about financial aid and all the things around financial aid. Let's talk about the resources we've created to help support you. The first one is the College Access Initiatives Training Center. This is where all of our trainings are. All of our trainings are free. We never charge for them. And our financial aid trainings are in English and Spanish. We also have recorded trainings for you. Like this will be a recorded training that you can access. And we will have this for all of our trainings. It's a new page, and we'll be updating it every other week. The 12-year campaign is a program that is here to support you as you support others taking their first steps to education after high school. It is ran by myself and Yasleen on the east side. We are your 12th year campaign team here to support you as you take care of students. I'm located on the west side. Yasleen's located in Tri-Cities on the east side. And together you might see us at some of your events. If you see us out and about, please come by and say hi. We love meeting you. What we do is we work to boost financial aid and admissions rates in Washington by helping you who are helping students. We have trainings, resources, completion events. We also have one-on-one support for you. So if you are maybe putting together an event and you want to talk about what's the best way to put this together, or resources that you need, we have one-on-one appointments where you can meet with us to plan your events. Speaking of events, another piece of feedback we received from educators in Washington State is that they want all of the financial aid events for the state in one page, and we're working on that. So we have our financial aid event page that you can send students to that have events all across Washington that they can attend. If you want to register your events, we have a link to on the one pager, a link that will allow you to submit the event to us. And it also allows us to see if you need support promoting that event through our OtterBot. We have resources for students who are immigrants, undocumented, or have DACA. This page here has lots of resources and supports, and there's also webinars too that you can attend to learn more about ways to best support these populations. Financial Aid Advising Day is a Washington state mandate that all high schools serving seniors have to provide financial aid information to the student and to the parents. So there's notification requirements. And we've created lesson plans for all the requirements of that program to help you provide that to students. So we have lesson plans that really are built on how much time you have in the day. So if you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it'll say this is how you can implement teaching students about why it's important to apply for financial aid or creating a WAFSA account. If you have 30 minutes, this is how you do this lesson plan, but a little bit longer and more in depth. Here's what you do if you have 45 minutes. I call it choose your own capacity. If you've got more than 45 minutes, if you're like, oh, Christina, I'm trying to plan a day. Oh my goodness, reach out to me. I would love to help you plan out your advising day like that. But we have these kind of broken down to be used in advisory. There's 5 different lesson plans, and all of them together include all the notification requirements of FAD. We have FAD planning sessions that you can do for that financial aid advising day with Yasleen or myself. We have a Padlet for students that walks them through how to apply for financial aid, where they go if they need help. This is updated every other week as well. And it also includes, and this is some requests from students, information on where to find your public library if you move, information of where to find public services where you go, where can you find culturally responsive food, things like that. So it really helps, not just with financial aid, but we added some additional stuff in there that students wanted as well. And that one's for students. But this is your college access resource Padlet, your keys to your financial aid success. And what it is everything you might want to know about financial aid in one spot. I update this one more frequently. This one is anytime there's an update from federal student aid, I'm putting it in here. So you're going to see it start to fill up more. I took out the stuff from last year. So this page here will have not just your updates, but access to presentations that you might need, translated materials, different training updates, different conferences they're having, all in one space. If there's a resource that you need and it's not on there, let me know. I'm happy to add it. And then we have Washington Financial Aid training videos. These videos, we had some videos before for students that were a little bit longer, and students are so wonderful. They like compliment sandwiched me. They were like, Christina, we love how much you love financial aid, but your video's long, girl, long. Could you maybe make it shorter and like have it be like maybe your dog is training us on like talking to us about financial aid? And I thought, okay, I wish I could. But because I can't teach my basset hound how to talk about financial aid, instead we have these amazing bouncing heads, and they have videos that are less than 2 minutes that talk a little bit about financial aid and little snippets. And they are in multiple languages. So you can use these in your classrooms. You can use these. We even have lesson plans built for these where you can use Kahoot quizzes after the videos to cement learning. If you want to play in the 26-27 FAFSA, you can with the prototype. The prototype is just a way for you to play in the application as a student, as a parent, as a returning student, as someone who's correcting an application. They have all these different profiles that you can use and go through. And the best part is you're not going to break it. So if you want to walk through like a student, just so you have that feeling before you're going through with students through their own applications, this is a great tool to use. And then WASAC also has a student loan advocacy office. This student loan advocacy office is wonderful for consumers of loans in Washington to better understand loans, but also to address student borrow questions and complaints. This is for anyone who's a consumer of a student loan in Washington State. So it's not just students, it could also be our educators as well. I absolutely love how they provide information on the changes to the loan repayment programs, things like that. It's been amazingly helpful, not just for me, but for students across the state, and I encourage you to use their resources. And then OtterBot. So OtterBot is our text messaging system for students and parents. It's AI generated, but it's driven by humans. So if the student or parent stumps the bot's going to be like, oh, I'm a mere otter. Let me get my humans. And so the best part about it is it has multiple content areas, so students can get information about financial aid, admissions and enrollment, college going information, and then reminders and notifications. I love this because students will text us in the middle of the night questions that they have that we can get them answers to without being awake. And if they stump us, then they have to wait till morning. But it's really cool that they can have access to that. What I like about this for educators is that how many times do you get asked, when is so-and-so's deadline? What is this? They can just text us those questions. I would tell them, oh, text Otter and see what is that? Because they can get the information right through Otter, and it just hopefully alleviates any extra work of just having to answer those questions repeatedly. And then our college access initiatives material order form. If you want materials about College Bound, about OtterBot, about financial aid or 12th year, you can order those for free. They're printed in color. We have stickers. We have other really cool like workbooks called the College and Career Knowledge. I encourage you, go online and order what you need. It's free to order materials. It does take 2 to 4 weeks to arrive. These materials are to be used by organizations and schools that are not charging, like they are not benefiting financially from them. So if you are a private organization listening to this video and you want to use these materials for your private business that you're earning money on, unfortunately, you're unable to order these. But if you are a school or a CBO, we're able to provide those to those who are not financially benefiting. Also, schools, if you will check and see if anyone else is ordering, I've had a couple schools that each person has ordered a couple hundred of each book. And then they realize they all got them, which is fine. But then they're like, what do we do with all of these? And so I encourage you just check to see if anyone else in your building is ordering before ordering. Here's an example of those college and career knowledge books. They're so good. They are freshman through senior year information about everything you want to know about pursuing education and training after high school. And there's lesson plans for them now. They're available in multiple languages, and the digital books are so cute. When you turn the page, they go, it's very adorable. And so you can use these as you're going through your lesson plans. And then finally, I know this is a long training. I come from a small but mighty team at the Washington Student Achievement Council. We are here to support you. You may not meet any of us, or you might meet some of us, but we are all behind the scenes, just rooting for you and your students, trying to find ways to best support you. Our favorite thing is helping those who are helping students. We know how hard you work. We see your emails at 5 in the morning. I had a counselor email me last night at 11, and I just at night. I know how hard you're working, and I just appreciate everything you're doing. No matter the role, everything you're doing to give students more opportunities in this world. Just the work that you're doing to support them is amazing. And one of my favorite things about this work is that we get to do it together. Thank you so much for learning more about financial aid and our financial aid basics training. We have more trainings that you can attend, including financial aid navigation, where we walk you through both applications as a student, dependent, independent. Um, Please join us for those trainings. Thank you so much for joining this training. If there's anything we can do to make this work easier, to partner with you, please feel free to reach out. It's one of our favorite things. And we just appreciate the opportunity to do this work with you. Thank you.